Episode 5 of Bridgerton Season 4 is not just another chapter in Benedict and Sophie's story, it feels like the line you cannot uncross. The new trailer and first look for Part 2 make one thing painfully clear. Whatever safety we thought this romance had is gone. The longing is still there, the chemistry is still burning, but now it comes with consequences. And from everything we've been shown, those consequences are about to land hard. The trailer for Bridgerton Season 4 Episode 5, titled Deeper Waters, changes the tone completely. Up until now, Part 1 let us sit in the tension, the stolen looks, the quiet conversations, the almost confessions, but this feels heavier, slower, more serious. The music swells differently, the glances linger longer. The silence between Benedict and Sophie says more than any grand declaration ever could. It no longer feels like a romantic chase, it feels like a collision that neither of them knows how to stop. Benedict is not drifting anymore. He is choosing, and that is what makes this episode dangerous. In the first half of the season, Benedict could hide behind confusion. He could pretend he was torn between a dream and reality. The Lady in Silver was safe because she was fantasy. Sophie was complicated because she was real. But now those two worlds have fully overlapped, and he cannot pretend they are separate. The trailer shows a Benedict who is restless, unsettled, almost frustrated. He wants clarity. He wants Sophie. He wants the feeling he had at the masquerade ball to make sense in the daylight. But wanting something and understanding it are not the same thing. What makes episode 5 feel different is that the story is no longer asking whether they love each other. It is asking what that love costs. Sophie has always understood the cost. That is the quiet tragedy underneath every scene we have seen of her. While Benedict is reaching forward, she is calculating. Every moment with him is not just emotional for her, it is strategic. One mistake could ruin her. One rumor could end her livelihood. The trailer makes this tension sharper. You can feel it in the way she holds herself, in the way she pauses before responding, in the way her expressions carry both longing and fear at the same time. She wants him. That has never been the question. The question is whether wanting him is something she can survive. And this is where the tone of Part 2 shifts into something deeper. Bridgerton has always wrapped its drama in beauty. Candlelight, silk gowns, elegant ballrooms, but episode 5 begins to strip that comfort away. The spaces between Benedict and Sophie feel tighter now, more enclosed, more private, and privacy in their world is not freedom, it is risk. The trailer hints at conversations that are no longer playful, they are intense, honest, maybe even painful. It feels like the moment where illusions fall and truths rise to the surface. Benedict believes he is offering love, but love, when shaped by privilege, can still be unfair. That idea hangs over everything in this first look. Benedict has grown up believing that if he feels something deeply enough, it must be noble. But Sophie does not have the luxury of emotional impulse. She lives inside rules that were not built for her benefit. When Benedict steps closer, he does it with confidence. When Sophie steps closer, she does it knowing she could lose everything. That imbalance has always been there, but episode 5 refuses to ignore it. What makes this trailer so powerful is how it suggests a breaking point. There is a sense that Sophie is reaching the edge of what she can endure. Not because she is weak, but because she is strong. She has been holding her boundaries carefully. She has been protecting her dignity in a world that tries to strip it from her daily. But feelings are messy, and love complicates logic. The tension we see building is not just romantic tension, it is emotional pressure. And pressure, when it builds long enough, explodes. For Benedict, this episode seems like a reckoning. He can no longer romanticize Sophie's struggle. He can no longer pretend that asking her to bend her life around his is a compromise. The first look suggests moments where he is forced to truly see her reality. Not as a dramatic obstacle, not as a poetic tragedy, but as a lived experience. And that shift in understanding is uncomfortable. It challenges the version of himself he has always believed in. The open-minded artist, the brother who thinks differently. Episode 5 seems determined to ask, is he different enough? What makes this so thrilling is that the show does not promise easy answers. The pacing in the trailer feels deliberate, almost restrained, like the story is holding its breath. Instead of rushing toward a romantic payoff, it leans into uncertainty. It allows silence, it allows conflict, it allows doubt. And that restraint makes everything feel more real, because real love stories are not just about passion. If episode 5 is called Deeper Waters, then the trailer makes it clear that neither Benedict nor Sophie truly understands how deep this is about to go. Because deeper waters are not just romantic, they are dangerous. They pull you under. And what part 2 seems ready to explore is what happens when love stops feeling like a dream and starts feeling like a test. One of the most striking things in the trailer is the shift in Benedict's energy. In part 1, he was searching, curious, almost playful in his obsession with the lady in silver. But now that the mystery has a face, now that Sophie stands in front of him as both fantasy and reality combined, he looks unsettled. There is a kind of urgency in him that feels new. He is no longer floating through this story. He is grasping. And when someone who has always had options suddenly feels like they might lose something, that desperation changes them. Benedict is used to doors opening. He is used to the world adjusting around his desires. So when Sophie hesitates, when she pulls back instead of leaning in fully, he does not immediately understand why. To him, this is simple. They care about each other. The connection is undeniable. Why not choose it? Why not fight for it? But what the trailer keeps hinting at is that for Sophie, choosing it is not romantic bravery. It is potential ruin. And that difference in perspective is where the tension tightens. We see glimpses of Sophie in her own world, and it is not soft. It is not forgiving. The beauty of Bridgerton has always existed from the view of those at the top. But episode 5 seems determined to remind us that the glittering society we love sits on invisible labor and invisible lives. Sophie has always lived in that shadow. She understands exactly how fragile her position is. One accusation, one scandal, one whisper, that is all it would take to destroy her future. Benedict risks discomfort. Sophie risks survival. The trailer leans into that imbalance in subtle ways. The way she looks at him sometimes is not just longing, it is calculation. It is fear mixed with hope. And that combination is heartbreaking because it tells us she is constantly weighing her heart against her safety. She is not playing hard to get. She is protecting herself in a world that offers her no protection at all. And then there is the emotional conflict inside Benedict that feels like it is finally coming to the surface. For so long, Benedict has defined himself as different from the rigid expectations of his world. He prides himself on thinking beyond tradition, on valuing art and passion over status and rules. But episode 5 seems ready to expose the limits of that self-image. Because it is easy to reject society in theory, it is much harder to dismantle it when it benefits you. Loving Sophie requires more than desire. It requires sacrifice, real sacrifice, and the trailer suggests he may not yet understand what that truly means. There is also something powerful in how the trailer frames silence. Conversations feel heavier, pauses stretch longer, the tension does not explode into dramatic declarations, instead it simmers. That slow burn makes everything feel more intense because we can sense what is building beneath the surface. The misunderstandings, the hurt, the frustration, these are not dramatic misunderstandings based on lack of communication. They are rooted in class, power, and lived experience. And those are not problems you fix with one heartfelt speech. Another important layer hinted at in the first look is how the outside world is starting to close in. Their connection no longer feels hidden in a safe bubble. There is a sense that eyes are watching, that boundaries are thinning. In Bridgerton society, secrecy is fragile, and once something becomes visible, it becomes dangerous. For Benedict, exposure might mean scandal. For Sophie, exposure could mean dismissal, disgrace, or worse. The stakes are uneven, and the trailer does not let us forget that. What makes this so compelling is that neither of them is entirely wrong. Benedict's feelings are real. His desire to keep Sophie in his life is sincere. But sincerity does not erase structure. It does not undo centuries of hierarchy. Sophie understands that love does not cancel power, and that awareness makes her both strong and deeply vulnerable. Episode 5 feels like it is building toward a confrontation, not just between two people, but between two realities. The reality Benedict wants to believe in, where love conquers and passion justifies risk, and the reality Sophie lives in, where love must be measured against survival. Those two truths cannot exist comfortably side by side forever. Something has to give. What makes episode 5 feel even more intense is the way it expands the conflict beyond just Benedict and Sophie's private struggle. The trailer hints that this is no longer a secret contained in stolen moments. This is becoming something that touches the Bridgerton name, the family legacy, and the carefully maintained image they have always protected. And when a Bridgerton makes a choice, it never affects just one person. It ripples outward. For the first time this season, it feels like Benedict's love story is colliding with the reality of his family. Up until now, his romance has existed in a quiet corner, separate from the grand expectations placed on the eldest sons and daughters. Benedict has always been the brother who could drift a little, who could experiment, who did not carry the same weight of responsibility as Anthony. But episode 5 suggests that drift is over. The moment his feelings for Sophie threaten to become public, they become political. Because in their world, marriage is not only about love. It is about alliances, status, stability. And Sophie does not fit the mold society expects for a Bridgerton son. The trailer hints at concern in the eyes of those around him. Not anger, not cruelty, but worry. And sometimes worry can be just as powerful as opposition. Benedict may believe he is prepared to fight for Sophie, but is he prepared to stand against the silent pressure of tradition, against the subtle disappointment, against the fear that he could harm his siblings' prospects simply by choosing differently? This is where the story becomes larger than romance. The Bridgertons have always been portrayed as a family built on love. Violet especially has guided her children toward marriages of affection rather than convenience, but even she lives within a system. Even she understands that love in their society must be negotiated carefully. The trailer suggests that episode 5 will explore that delicate balance. Supporting your child's happiness is one thing, supporting a choice that could destabilize the entire family is another. And that tension feels like it is quietly rising in the background. At the same time, we see signs that Sophie's isolation is becoming sharper. While Benedict wrestles with family expectations, Sophie stands alone. She does not have a powerful last name to shield her. She does not have siblings to fall back on. Every decision she makes is hers to carry alone, and that loneliness is heavy. The trailer gives us glimpses of her internal struggle, not loud or dramatic, but controlled and restrained. It is the kind of restraint that comes from years of having to endure quietly. What makes this so emotionally charged is that Sophie is not asking for rescue. She is asking for respect. She wants to be chosen fully, not hidden, not reduced to a compromise that protects Benedict's comfort while risking her dignity. And that demand changes the dynamic completely, because now the question is not whether he loves her. The question is whether he values her enough to dismantle the systems that make loving her complicated. There is also an important shift in how Benedict seems to be processing his own identity. The trailer hints at moments where he looks genuinely conflicted, almost shaken. For someone who has always believed himself to be open-minded and progressive, confronting the limits of that belief is painful. It forces him to see that good intentions are not enough, that admiration is not enough, that passion is not enough. Love requires action, and action, in his case, requires sacrifice. The deeper tension here is internal. Benedict is not fighting a villain. He is fighting his own comfort, his own privilege, his own assumptions about what is possible. And that is a far more complicated battle. It is easier to defeat an enemy than to confront your own blind spots. Episode 5 seems ready to push him into that confrontation, whether he feels prepared or not. Meanwhile, the world around them feels tighter. The society they move in thrives on gossip and hierarchy. Even the smallest deviation can become spectacle. The trailer creates this quiet sense that their time to decide is running out. The longer they linger in uncertainty, the more dangerous it becomes, and that ticking pressure adds suspense to every interaction. Every look between them feels like it carries the weight of what might happen if someone sees too much. What makes this storyline so compelling is that it refuses to simplify the conflict. This is not a story where one grand speech will fix everything. The issues between Benedict and Sophie are rooted in structure, in history, in power. And that means growth must be real. It must be earned. Episode 5 feels like the turning point where excuses stop working, where both of them must confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and the world they live in. The most thrilling part of this trailer is that it does not promise a clear outcome. It does not reassure us that love will automatically win. Instead, it builds suspense by making us question whether they are truly ready for what loving each other demands. Because sometimes stepping into deeper waters means discovering Tia. What truly defines episode 5, based on everything the trailer and first look are hinting at, is not just romance or conflict, but transformation. This feels like the episode where illusions fall away completely. Not just for Benedict, not just for Sophie, but for us as viewers who have been comfortable inside the glow of this world for 3 seasons. Because once the fantasy is questioned, it cannot be unquestioned. Bridgerton has always given us sweeping love stories wrapped in elegance. Even when characters struggled, the structure of their world remained stable. Titles mattered, families remained intact. Reputations could be bruised, but rarely shattered. Episode 5 feels like it is challenging that safety. It asks what happens when love does not fit neatly into society's framework, when the rules themselves become the obstacle. The trailer builds a quiet but undeniable sense that something is about to break. Not necessarily in a dramatic scandal, but emotionally. There is a weight behind the looks Benedict and Sophie exchange now. It no longer feels like anticipation. It feels like reckoning. They are standing on the edge of a choice that will redefine them both. And what makes this so gripping is that neither option is painless. If Benedict walks away, he loses the one person who has truly challenged him, the one who sees him beyond his title. But if he chooses her openly, he risks dismantling the life he has always known. And for the first time, that risk feels real. The trailer suggests that this is not a temporary rebellion. This is not a romantic impulse he can later smooth over. This is permanent, the kind of decision that changes family dynamics, social standing, and personal identity all at once. For Sophie, the transformation is even sharper. She has spent her life surviving within strict limits. Loving Benedict has already stretched those limits to their breaking point. Episode 5 seems ready to ask her the hardest question of all. How much is she willing to endure for love? And more importantly, should she have to endure anything at all? That question reframes the entire season, because love should not demand self-erasure, it should not demand silence, and it should not demand that one person shrink so the other can remain comfortable. The tension in the trailer feels less like a romantic tease and more like emotional inevitability. Every moment between them feels charged with the awareness that time is running out. They cannot stay suspended in uncertainty. They cannot keep circling the same argument. At some point, truth has to be spoken clearly, and truth, in their case, is complicated. There is also a deeper thematic layer that episode 5 appears to explore, the idea of worth. Sophie has been told directly and indirectly that she is less important, less deserving, less visible. Benedict's love challenges that narrative, but only if it is complete, only if it is public, only if it acknowledges her fully. Anything less reinforces the same hierarchy she has fought her entire life, and that is why his growth matters so much, because it is not about grand gestures, it is about whether he truly sees her as equal. The trailer hints that Benedict is beginning to understand this. There is a shift in his expression, in his stillness. He looks less certain, but more aware. And awareness is the first step toward change. The question is whether that awareness will lead to action, because understanding injustice is different from challenging it. And episode 5 seems poised to demand action. What makes this episode feel so suspenseful is the sense that both of them are approaching an emotional breaking point at the same time. Sophie cannot continue living in half measures. Benedict cannot continue believing love alone is enough. Their confrontation feels inevitable. And not explosive in a dramatic way, but devastating in a quiet one. The kind of conversation where words land heavily, where silence says more than shouting ever could. And beyond them, the world continues turning. Society does not pause for personal growth. Expectations remain, gossip spreads, reputations hang in delicate balance. The trailer subtly reminds us that even if they resolve their feelings, the external consequences will not disappear. Love might be powerful, but the structures around them are powerful too. That tension between heart and hierarchy is what makes this storyline feel so mature, so layered. By the end of the first look, one thing becomes clear. Episode 5 is not about simple romantic payoff. It is about choice. It is about whether Benedict can step out of the comfort of privilege and into real partnership. It is about whether Sophie can trust that stepping forward will not destroy her. It is about whether love can survive when tested by reality instead of protected by fantasy. And that is why this trailer feels so thrilling, because it does not promise safety. It promises depth. It promises discomfort. It promises